One of our acquaintances, a guy who used to be an assistant to a builder and architect, told us this story at a party. He said, "Someone called Banna to do some house repairs. Gave him the address and everything. So me, the master builder, and 2 workers grabbed our tools and went there." He explained that it wasn't easy to find the place. The neighborhood was deep in the south of the city, tucked away in a maze of streets. After a lot of searching, they finally found the house. It was hidden in a long, narrow alley. The house itself was empty. The owner, a very ordinary man, had taken his wife and kids somewhere else for a few days while the repairs got done. They started work around 8 in the morning. By 10 o'clock, the man telling the story stepped outside to check on the 2 workers mixing cement at the entrance. One of the workers was a middle-aged man, around 40. The other was young, good-looking, and cheerful. They were joking and working with their shovels when suddenly they noticed someone entering the alley. As he got closer, they could see him clearly. He was short, but his body was wide, stocky. His legs were short, but his arms were long, and his appearance overall was disturbing. Ugly, frightening. His face looked like something out of a nightmare, twisted with old scars and covered in blistered skin, the kind of face you'd expect to see on a monster or giant. He stopped a few steps from them and stared. Then he smiled, an awful, crooked smile. His eyes locked onto the young worker, and then he started moving toward him. Everyone froze, but the middle-aged worker reacted first. He gripped his shovel like a spear and pointed it directly at the man. "Don't come any closer," he said. The strange man paused, but then he stepped forward again. This time, the worker's tone changed, firm, angry. He raised the shovel higher. "If you take one more step, I'll strike you down right here." The man stopped. He stood there for a few seconds, thinking. Then his eyes darted around at all of them, and finally, he turned and walked back out of the alley. They never saw him again. Not that day, not the other 3 days they worked there. When the owner came back, they told him what had happened. At first, he claimed he had no idea who it could have been, but then something clicked. He paused and said, "You know, when I was a kid, my father used to talk about a poor man who had leprosy. Said he'd shown up in this neighborhood 50 or 60 years ago. He was sick, looked frightening. People used to run home when they saw him. Those who were brave enough would shout at him or curse at him until he left." Then he added, "But that man died more than 30 years ago. He's been gone for a long time." The man telling the story looked at us and said, "When we heard that, we all just froze. I couldn't sleep for weeks. That horrible face kept showing up in my dreams, just standing there, alone, watching." Hi, I'm Gwen and I'm 21 years old now, but the story I'm about to tell you happened when I was just 5. Back then, my family lived in a 2-story house that my parents rented. It was just me, my mom, my dad, and my mom's working student. We'll call her Mary. One afternoon, we were all in my parents' bedroom. I was busy playing games on my mom's phone while my parents decided to head downstairs for a snack. My dad asked, "Do you want to come with us?" I shook my head, eyes still on the screen.
"Nope, I'll stay here,"
I replied. They didn't argue. They just let me be and closed the door behind them. A few minutes passed. I started to feel hungry, so I decided I'd head downstairs too. But when I walked to the door and tried to open it, it wouldn't open. I checked the doorknob. It moved, so I knew it wasn't locked. But I pulled again, and still the door wouldn't budge. I thought to myself, maybe Mary's holding it from the other side. We used to play little pranks on each other. This wouldn't be the first time. I called out,
"Mary, please open the door."
No response.
"Mary, open the door, please."
I shouted, now banging on the door. Still nothing. I let go of the doorknob for a second, catching my breath. Then, with all my strength, I pulled the door. It cracked open, just a little. And that's when I saw it, a headless figure standing right outside the door, dressed in a long white nightgown, and the figure was missing its head. I froze, my eyes wide. My tiny hands let go of the door. I backed away and began banging on the door again, yelling,
"Let me out! Let me out!"
Yes, I was terrified, but somehow I didn't cry. I tried to open the door again, and that's when I saw something even more disturbing. The headless figure was tying a big towel around the doorknob, looping it around the stair handrail. It was trapping me inside. Today, that might sound ridiculous, but 5-year-old me, I was panicking beyond belief. I pulled on the door again with all my might, but it wouldn't move. The towel was tightening, and then the figure started walking toward me. I could see through the slightly cracked door that it was getting closer and closer, and I could see the stump where its neck should have been. I screamed and slammed the door shut. A few minutes later, I heard a voice calling out. It was Mary. She came from the living room and walked up the stairs, finding me trapped inside. She looked confused when she found me.
"What happened here?"
she asked.
"The headless person,"
I said, my voice trembling. She stared at the towel tied between the knob and the handrail.
"Gwen, did you do this?"
I shook my head, frantic.
"No, it was the headless person."
She sighed.
"Headless person? Gwen, those aren't real."
I tried to convince her, begged her to believe me, but she didn't. She untied the towel and opened the door. I stepped out, still shaken, and scanned the hallway, expecting the figure to appear from around the corner, or maybe crawl down from the ceiling, but there was nothing. When I went downstairs, my parents were still eating. Did they not hear me? I ran to them and told them everything. They laughed. I eventually started thinking maybe I imagined it, just a child's wild imagination. A year later, when I turned 6, we moved into a new house, one that my parents owned. Mary graduated and moved away to become a teacher, and we didn't really keep in touch. Years passed and that memory faded, but recently we had a house deliverance, a cleansing, and ever since that happened, I haven't stopped thinking about that day. We were talking to a priest about the paranormal experiences we've had in the past, and I told that story again, this time with my parents sitting right beside me, and for the first time, they looked disturbed. My parents admitted something. They told me that back in that same house, when I was just 3 years old, they'd seen something too. They said I had an imaginary friend back then, and one day they saw me eating something invisible, saying it was a food that my friend gave me. That was the moment that everything clicked. What if it wasn't my imagination? Some people might say, why would a ghost show up during the day? Or why would it lock a little girl inside a room? But if it was Mary playing a prank, wouldn't I have seen her, head slouching forward in that nightgown? But no, what I saw was a human figure, standing upright, with no head on top of its shoulders, and I don't think I imagined that. My story happened back in 2017 when I was 15 years old. My family is originally from North Carolina, and we're Cherokee Native Americans if you're wondering. My parents raised me and my siblings to always treat other Native people with kindness and compassion. It's something they deeply believed in and something they taught us to carry with pride. This happened one summer afternoon around 4 p.m. At the time, I was working a part-time job at a small grocery shop across town to save up money for a trip. I had a 5:30 p.m. shift, and since I was the youngest of 6, with all of my siblings moved out and both my parents at work, I had to take the bus. As I waited at the stop, the bus was still about 15 minutes away. That's when I saw a man walking toward me. I didn't have my glasses on that day, so I couldn't make out his features at first, but when he got closer, I noticed he was Native too. He had long, braided hair, a clean-shaven face, and was wearing a traditional Native necklace, the kind my grandfather used to wear. It actually made me smile. He looked to be in his early 20s, with deep bags around his eyes and a worried, almost paranoid expression. He kept glancing over his shoulder and nervously playing with his necklace, fidgeting. Something about him just looked uneasy. I kind of felt sorry for him, so I gave him a small wave and a polite smile. He saw it, but just nodded. After a few minutes, he turned to me and asked,
"Could you lend me some money?"
I instantly thought about the $35 I had in my pocket, money I planned to use later that night to hang out with my friends. So I lied. I said, "Sorry, I don't have anything on me." As soon as I said that, his face changed, not with anger, but with something like shock. Before I could even process his reaction, he looked over my shoulder. I turned around to see what he was looking at, and there was another man approaching, maybe in his 40s, wearing dirty work jeans, boots, and a black t-shirt. Something about him instantly put me on edge. I panicked. I grabbed my backpack and crossed the road, hoping they'd both just leave before the bus came. From the other side, I could hear them arguing, something about money. Then everything escalated so fast I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The man in the black shirt suddenly shoved the younger guy to the ground and screamed,
"I told you I'd kill you if you didn't pay me back, you bastard!"
Then he pulled out a gun and shot him 3 times, all in the head. My ears started ringing. I couldn't move. Some woman nearby screamed. I think she was sitting on a bench, but I barely heard her. I just ran. I didn't stop until I made it home, completely shaken, thinking I might be next. My parents called the police as soon as I told them what happened. I gave my statement and tried to cope with the shock. Now fast forward to 2020, I was talking to my mom about it again, and that's when she told me something I'll never forget. She had found out who the man was. His name was Ed City. He lived with a family of 5. They'd been struggling financially, and he'd been doing everything he could to support them. Turns out he had gotten involved with some very bad people because he owed them money. But according to his mother, he'd already paid most of it off. Apparently, he was only a few dollars short. He was just $20 short. $20. That's when it hit me. I had the money. I could have given it to him. I could have saved him. My parents raised me to be generous, to help others, especially those in our native community. But that day, I chose not to, and it haunts me. To this day, I can't stop thinking, what if I had just helped? Would he still be alive? I hope one day I can forgive myself, but right now the guilt and shame still eat me alive.